Colleen Ballinger is back again, and it is so much messier than before. Between past grooming allegations, a ukulele apology that broke the internet, and now this very bizarre tea time interview with Raven-Symoné that just feels a bit like a PR fever dream.
It really wasn't. Like, that was for an adult audience.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I certainly never thought I'm making a kid show or a kid character or something to entertain children.
You would think at some point we would hit the bottom of the barrel. But no, apparently this is not the bottom of this barrel. Today I want to discuss what has actually happened, talk about why this interview has sparked so much outrage and why so many people, including former fans, feel like this entire situation is one of those with patterns of deflection, minimizing and avoiding accountability. We are going to recap all of the past, the allegations, the controversies, the parasocial dynamics and the general state of online responsibility. And let's also talk about Raven-Symoné's involvement, because this story has layers. And of course, before we go any further, please let this act as a trigger warning. There will be conversations about grooming allegations, inappropriate conduct, including minors, victim blaming, and a lot of discussion regarding online safety. Please, if this video does not feel right for you, just click off of it and we will see you in the next one. So here is a really quick recap of the situation. Colleen Ballinger, formerly known as Miranda Sings, has been largely off of the internet since 2023 after allegations resurfaced about her having inappropriate relations with a minor, with her fan group being mostly minors and her having a lot of fan interactions. She made the now sadly infamous toxic gossip train.
Fun. All aboard the toxic gossip train, chugging down the tracks of misinformation,
which is arguably one of the most tone-deaf apology videos I think YouTube has ever seen. And then she mostly went quiet. I believe she has been vlogging and having some sort of online presence, but last week we got a bit of a bombshell. So she had appeared on Raven-Symoné's podcast called Tea Time, in which many viewers saw what they see as a PR reset, just disguised as a bit of a cozy, let's sit down and talk about this podcast. But instead of accountability, we got deflection, minimizing, and the same rehearsed narrative as before, and people are calling it manipulative, frustrating, and deeply disrespectful to all the individuals involved. So let's rewind briefly and let's just go over briefly how this can make sense to the interview. So Colleen's early days, she was sort of seen as YouTube royalty. She had definitely built herself a YouTube empire. She had a huge child and teen audience. I can't lie, I did watch her content when I was younger. Miranda Sings became this massive brand to the point she had her own tours and books, meet and greets, shows, kind of a whole brand surrounded around this YouTube character called Miranda Sings. This also came with a very parasocial fan-based culture. There had been some very early red flags that I think some people wanted to ignore. There was a big amount of oversharing, and considering her child audience, it did raise a few eyebrows. There was also a lot of minors in her comedy. I mean, on her tour, there is videos of her having a young person put his hand down her trousers.
Oh, I'm so hungry! Wait a minute. Want a cheese ball?
No thanks.
Then he can decide if you had a nice romantic connection. He can decide if he wants to give you a little kiss around.
I can't believe I'm reaching in there right now.
In context with the scene, it is very strange, and she's a grown woman. Minors were in a lot of the content. There was also just a lot of inappropriate jokes and timelines, and then additionally a creepy uncle storyline that we will get onto later in the video. And a very big part of this story, and someone who has bravely spoken about their experience online, is that of Adam McIntyre.
Here's something that no one wants to talk about. I've been seeing so many tweets today that have been like, for someone who wants to move on from trauma, you sure talk about her enough, about me, right? And being like, the only time you'll get views if you talk about her. Not true. But in terms of the talking about her a lot, this woman tried to ruin my life.
He has been one of the biggest catalysts of this story being put out into the public. He has alleged that she would send him underwear as a joke, and there has been video footage to prove this or to back this up. She involved him in personal drama as a child, blurred boundaries in ways that he didn't feel were appropriate, used him for unpaid labour, then publicly humiliated him when he tried to step back. His experience was repeated by others coming forward. Claims of grooming adjacent behaviour, private group chats, a lot of sharing of private and personal information, and treating the younger fans as a support crutch. Again, I do want to kind of heavily say these are allegations. They have not been proven in court, but they're also not isolated incidents. There are numerous similar stories, so I think you just kind of need to take your own opinion on this since there has been no legal case. I do want to talk about something that has sadly become infamous online, and that is the toxic gossip train. Truly one of the most infamous apologies on the internet history. Instead of addressing the claims that she had been accused of, which are very serious, she instead sang a 10-minute ukulele-backed song, telling viewers that they were riding along on the toxic gossip train. It wasn't just tone deaf with the whole situation, it was dismissive. It really came across as mocking the viewers, blaming the internet, really pushing down on the victims involved. She made herself the punchline, as she made infamous, "I'm not a groomer, I'm just a loser."
The only thing I've ever groomed is my 2 Persian cats. I'm not a groomer. I'm just a loser.
And she just very outright rejected any accountability. Her career pretty much nosedived overnight, and now after all of that she seems to be resurfacing as she has on Tea Time. So let's get on to the interview itself, because if you haven't watched it, imagine someone trying to rewrite history while sipping on some tea on a cozy sofa and just talking about it like it's not a big deal. And that seemingly is what this interview is like.
Like, that was for an adult audience.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I certainly never thought I'm making a kid show or a kid character or something to entertain children. They were noticing, because they came to a couple of my live shows, the people involved, and they're like, oh, there's a lot of teens here. So let's put this on the kids app. And I was like, whoa, this is not a kid show. Like, I do not want this on the kids app. But they really wanted it there because they saw a younger audience. Mm-hmm. And they were like, we want the younger audience to be able to see this. And I was like, that's fine, but like, they need their parents' approval because this is not a kid show.
Colleen repeatedly downplayed the allegations. She framed it all as just big misunderstandings and kind of blamed the internet on blowing things out of proportion. This toxic gossip train idea came back up, and she implied that the victims were just participating in gossip.
Whatever hate comments or hate I receive, I've already thought it about myself at some point in my life. So
That, to me, is actually the answer. That the person that you are, because you've struggled with your worth, because you've struggled with your confidence, it's like when you have those questions of, am I worthy enough to be here? If you're in this industry and you show weakness, that will be eaten alive.
And sat alongside her was Raven-Symoné, who was conducting the podcast, and she didn't push back at all. So a lot of people are angry. The interview gave Colleen a platform with no real accountability. It let her reframe allegations without challenges, without someone trying to question her. It really minimised the very serious claims and just put it down to internet drama. And again, painted herself as a victim of cancel culture, which is something that is a very interesting topic on social media and on the internet, and used a soft, cozy podcast setting as the whole backbone of this message. I think you can understand why it didn't really land too well. So, of course, off the back of this, Raven-Symoné is getting quite a decent amount of backlash in regards to this podcast episode. I think this is really tricky because you can criticise someone's behaviour without attacking them, but the backlash towards Raven stems from giving Colleen this very uncritical space, laughing along with some of these minimisations, calling the allegations drama, framing victims as haters, and appearing to help to rehabilitate Colleen's image online. The internet has, of course, reacted very strongly, and I wouldn't say it's without reasonable reasons. A lot of people are saying the victims deserved better. Why give someone like this a platform? And that it was more so of a PR stunt dressed up as girl talk. With such a large controversy surrounding them, you would really hope that if they were to be platformed, it wouldn't be at such a laid back and judgment-free zone, I suppose. Is the hate justified for Raven-Symoné? I think some of it is hate at a larger scale range. A lot of influencers seem to be helping other influencers to avoid accountability. And again, Raven is not accountable for whatever Colleen did and her actions. She is, however, accountable for how she conducted the interview and how she handled the situation. And I think viewers are within their own right to analyse that to a T. I think there is some sort of responsibility when it comes to podcasts or interviews in really portraying a thoughtful or positive conversation and image. These are spaces where you can be really influential and you can really help someone, or you can really help get messages across. And maybe this was for the rage bait or because she knew it would get views. However, I don't think that necessarily all the bad views and the bad attention is good attention. I do think there is a very serious undertone happening here, and it seems to be that a lot of influencers are navigating cancel culture or their serious allegations as cancel culture, with many saying that the internet's overreacted, people love drama, or you as the audience have ruined my life. I think it's a very easy and comfortable narrative to sit behind, and I think it is really starting to lose accountability for actions because they think they have the internet or the excuse of cancel culture as a crutch, but it is really ignoring something major. Not all backlash is cancel culture, and sometimes it is consequences. If a creator is crossing boundaries with minors, or is behaving inappropriately, or is using their platform irresponsibly, then I think the public has a right to question. I feel like the interview kind of pictured it as the internet were really horrible to me, rather than there were allegations involving minors, and this was a very serious topic. And again, no reflection was made. I think that framing alone made the internet very angry with this podcast. When you look at it, Colleen had heavily built her fan base up on minors. She would engage in DMs, group chats, intimate interactions at shows, inserting fans into her own personal life, joking about things that children shouldn't have even been exposed to. And she really fostered this parasocial relationship, and these can get very dangerous.
Up on stage for your live show, she was a part of the yoga challenge section of your show. It made them feel gross. Later in life, they were essayed, and when they look back at that moment with you, they feel similar feelings.
Our two people on both legs are spread open, you're holding each other's legs. And I genuinely never thought of it as a sexual or inappropriate thing. To me, the joke was that when the legs were open to do the pose, the fart sound effect came on screen. So it was like, and it was for the laugh. You know, you're on stage, and it is different than when you're online and you can read comments from people who go, hey, that's not cool.
You know, when a creator is oversharing, boundaries can collapse and they start to foster this friendship relationship rather than a creator and fan dynamic. So this is exactly an environment where some very inappropriate dynamics can kind of flourish. And that has been a big critic point over the years with Miranda Sings. There has been a very persistent thread in Colleen Ballinger's controversies with a theme that she presented during her shows, and with the current allegations, of course, it's coming to light again, is a character called Uncle Jim, which was part of her Netflix show Haters Back Off. So Miranda Sings, of course, had a lot of lore. So Jim was not just her uncle in this lore, he was her manager, her emotional crutch, and the only adult who really seemed to believe in her delusions of fame. According to the Haters Back Off wiki, Jim is her full-time manager and was deeply devoted to Miranda. What makes Jim particularly worrying is his behaviours and how his relationship with Miranda is framed. Behind Jim's enabling behaviour lies repeated, ambiguous and frankly uncomfortable inferences of incest or sexual undertones. According to former writers of the show, Colleen herself did push for incestual innuendos, scenes where Miranda and Jim would be in somewhat compromising positions, or or sharing stomach-churning moments of intimacy, all while being framed as innocent misunderstandings by Miranda. There was even a recurring prop called the daddy saddle, an explicitly adult-coded saddle that Miranda used to ride on Jim's back. That isn't just comic absurdity, that is deeply symbolic of power imbalance, infantilization, and blurred family boundaries. Now, when we kind of look at the podcast or interview context, it is really hard to ignore things like the Uncle Jim scenario. It's seeming to mirror the real life accusations that Colleen is going through herself now. Critics have said that she has constantly been flirting or is normalizing weird, uncomfortable dynamics, including minors. In her scripted work and in her fan interactions, when you tie the fictional narrative to the real world scenarios and allegations of grooming, of oversharing with minors, of boundary violations, it starts to feel less like an eccentric character that was made and more like a reoccurring motif of exploitation. Some fans on Reddit are constantly making this comparison with Uncle Jim and the current Colleen Ballinger situation. Do you think it's fair to keep using this Uncle Jim as a recurring reference to Colleen's behaviours? Can we really treat characters like this as a joke, or should we really be viewing them as a more troubling, larger pattern? A lot of people believe she shouldn't have a platform, and I would say I don't believe she should, regardless of if she's not been to court or, you know, if there's not been no further legal action. I don't believe the way she's conducted herself online has been appropriate, even in relation to reacting to these allegations. I think it has shown a very toxic and dangerous narrative that I just don't know if it's best to be online. There has obviously been some sort of boundary crossing. I think she has somewhat touched on this, whether she is saying it was immoral or not. Being a creator, you really have that responsibility to not have inappropriate relationships and to know your place as a creator, especially when younger people are involved. And she obviously hasn't understood this, and I don't think she should necessarily keep getting the chance to keep blurring these lines. So the internet's reaction has been crazy. So I don't think the backlash was just people being dramatic on Twitter. I think it was a genuine, widespread feeling of disbelief and frustration, and to be honest, just exhaustion at the whole situation. I don't think people are just mad that Colleen did an interview. This interview really felt like a final straw in dodging accountability and just really not taking any of these allegations seriously. And I think the reaction online shows this very clearly. I think when the interview dropped, the overwhelming response is, why is she back? Not really in a cancel culture hates redemption kind of way, but more so you never really addressed what happened and now you're acting like it didn't happen type of thing. A lot of people thought that this interview was more so PR. It was to help her image rehabilitation and not to focus on accountability. And I think it was an attempt to re-enter the community that she very badly exited with a ukulele video. I don't think grooming allegations are something you can just move on from. I think whether people believe the allegations fully or partially or not at all, I think a big issue is also they were never fully acknowledged meaningfully. I don't think you can be accused of having relations like this with a minor, including sending underwear to minors, running groups of children where you are sending very inappropriate messages, and just socializing with a lot of underage people, and then act like this was just a little bit of past internet drama. I think a lot of people are agreeing you can't skip this accountability. And again, Raven felt really irresponsible when it came to this interview. This interview could have been something very groundbreaking for Raven. She could have really asked challenging questions and really fought for some accountability, or at least got Colleen to really acknowledge some of the allegations she is tied to. Instead, Raven gave her a soft landing space, a tea date, and honestly just a platform where she can try and rehabilitate her image with no real repercussions. So of course, a common question is, why are you giving someone accused of doing this with minors such an easy platform to come back to with zero questions or comeback? Fans feel manipulated. I think a lot of Colleen's fans did grow up with her. She was a comfort YouTuber, a creator a lot of people felt like they trusted, and a creator that was commonly spoken about between friendship groups. And now a lot of people are looking back and noticing the very inappropriate themes and patterns, and there is a lot of anger. I don't think this is just a silly celebrity backlash. I think a lot of fans are holding on to the fact that they felt betrayed about what has happened, alongside the weight of the allegations she is being held up against. Another side of it, I think people are really angry at the hypocrisy. Colleen had spent years calling out haters, controlling narratives and presenting herself as the victim. And again, she really leaned into the parasocial closeness with her fan base. And now she is positioning herself as someone who is misunderstood, targeted and unfairly criticised. People are seeing the hypocrisy and they're done with it. And I think there is a really genuine fear that this is all blowing over. I think because there is a hint of nostalgia and she is charismatic, I think it seems like the situation could be swept under the carpet. People are questioning, is she going to really escape accountability? Is this going to be a conversation that comes up every 6 months? Or is the internet just going to forget what's happened because she's done an interview with Raven-Symoné? This is an ongoing conversation about a creator who is really avoiding accountability. I think this interview has made it painfully clear for a lot of people that Colleen just really hasn't learnt anything. So after everything we've discussed with the allegations, the interview, the pattern of boundary breaking behaviour and the failure to address harm, we are left with a much bigger question of should Colleen even be allowed to have a platform? I think it does raise alarm bells of how did a creator get to this size when so many red flags were present? And how did she get to a position of trust and influence and authority over millions of young people? This shouldn't have happened. I think this is showing a somewhat deeper meaning to do with influencers and celebrity culture and just the online fan bases, because I think at the centre of this is something that could have been a lot more preventable. A grown adult was blurring boundaries with minors repeatedly and publicly for years, and people excused it as her playing a character or being relatable or just quirky. Fans were defending her because they felt like they knew her. Networks ignored her behaviours because she was profitable, and the internet just kept letting it happen. I think there is a massive gap between creator accountability and creator popularity. It's about how quickly as the internet are we willing to forgive people just because we like their content, and how can we really protect the children who are stuck in the crossfire? We really need situations like this to remind us that just because someone is relatable online does not mean they are safe, and just because someone is a content creator doesn't mean they just receive blind loyalty and trust. Just because someone is an entertainer definitely does not mean that they are a good role model, and we really need to start listening to young people when they say that they feel like something is wrong. Do you think that as the internet we are ever going to get creators to have full accountability for their actions, or are we stuck in a cycle where popularity outweighs accountability? Let me know below. I will be reading and reacting to what you guys say. And finally, whatever you think of Colleen Ballinger, I think this situation should have had a turning point years ago. The warning signs were there, the victims spoke up, and the internet really did have all the information it needed. I don't think this should have really been getting to the point where we're debating if she should be allowed to come back, because I don't think her comeback should be allowed without the accountability, transparency and remorse and actual investigations. I think we owe young audiences better. I think we owe the victims a lot better, and I just think that the creators really need to take some accountability. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one, and yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next one.